Testing. Okay. Testing. Okay. All right. I do see I have someone here. I'm not in my usual setup. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in the chat here. I do apologize how the quality is on this. It does not sound. Um, but I do want to kind of make a short stream here, just to kind of go over a couple things, catch up. I missed streaming against the Hornets. Um, want to talk about what happened there. Um,
Yeah, that you should quit trying. You were too small and you were too young. They tell you the chance is too slim, the world is too big, but you say how come? I'm ready to light a new fire, raise a new flag to cross a new sea. And if I'm ever the one in your way, then put your head down and run right through me. I keep settling for so much less. Don't take what's given, just demand what's next.
all right. I'm aware of how bad this mic sounds, but I do want to just kind of catch up on some stuff. I'm not gonna make a video with this mic. If I made a video with this mic, everyone would hate me. So I would totally understand if people would hate me if I did such a thing. But I do want to kind of talk about what's going on right now with this Bulls team. Obviously, a big win tonight against the Orlando Magic, which was definitely necessary for this kind of at least show some sort of life. But the previous two games were awful though. The previous two games were some they were overall pretty horrible. So I want to talk about a couple of things of their struggles, and then talk about this game and why the Bulls won this one. But then I do want to talk about the trade deadline very quickly. This could be a very short, kind of hour-long stream, maybe. But welcome in if you are just joining. Again, look at the pin message. I'm not in my usual setup right now, but I do apologize about the mic quality. It does sound horrible, and I am aware. But what we're going to be doing here is I do want to see what your guys' thoughts are on where this team should be going moving forward. So we're going to save that after I talk about this stuff here. But we gotta figure out some of this other stuff that's going on with this Bulls team, which includes, in my opinion, Billy Donovan. And future-wise, like there's a lot of questions going on right now, and I'm gonna start pulling up some tweets that I do think are extremely interesting, in my opinion, just to kind of look at as like a potential retool. Because now I'm officially I'm like, in my head now, because of the Bulls losing against the Pacers and losing against the Hornets, like in my head it's like, oh, it's for sure, like we're getting some sort of deal that's gonna happen. So I'm not sure what exactly that's gonna be, but I would like to hear you guys. What's going on, Magugla? Hope you're doing well. Life is gonna win, Bulls win for sure. Um, Again, I want to just say one more time, I do apologize about the mic quality, but I'm not my usual setup, so it's just jank setup right now, but we're gonna live with it, and I'm just happy that I'm actually able to do this still. I was actually a little bit afraid I wasn't gonna be able to stream. As a Magic fan, great win for you guys, being able to hold off the late third/fourth quarter run. What's going on, David? Um, I'm overall still just kind of pissed right now, but I'm happy to see you're in chat right now. But yeah, I'm pissed still. You got the win. I'm pissed at this season, but I'm gonna just tell you right now that your Magic are gonna get a first round pick from the Bulls this year that could potentially be in the lottery, and it really sucks for me to say that, but you're very welcome for that pick. What's going on, Unstoppable? Yeah. I'm overall pretty upset. um, that was a very interesting game overall, David. I do want to talk a little bit. Oh, I apologize. Hold on. My mic is peaking, and I'm gonna change that really quick. I apologize about that. All right, let's see this. Okay, I think that. No, still. Alright, I think this is better now. Hopefully the mic doesn't peak anymore. I do apologize about that. I don't want this mic to peak, especially because it's very poor quality. Alright, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk a little bit about this game. I was very shocked to see that the Magic, they decided to kind of just run with their bench. I will give credit to Mo Wagner, Jalen Suggs, and Cole Anthony for what they did. They came in, and the Magic starters, they really struggled in that one. But we saw the bench come in and give the Magic a little bit of a spark. And as David pointed out in chat here, they put up a run against this Bulls team, and it kind of, like, as a Bulls fan, I'm just like, man, here we go again, because I knew what this team has done recently, and I just would not have been shocked if this Bulls team actually blew another lead that they should not have blown, right? But luckily for us, the Bulls did not blow another lead, a second half lead, right? So Bulls ended up coming home with they're gonna come back to Chicago with a 1-2 road trip, which to me you should have went 3-0, but at least you didn't go undefeated, or sorry, or at least you didn't go winless. You should have went undefeated. So it's still overall disappointing for the Bulls, but they needed to get this game for sure. And I'm happy to see that the Bulls they went and took care of business tonight. I thought the first half was that first quarter was really interesting. I thought the Bulls could have kind of got a little bit of a bigger lead in that first quarter, but the Magic went on a little bit of a run. And then we saw in that second quarter the Bulls looked a little bit better on the offensive end. The Magic were also better offensively that quarter, but the Bulls won that quarter by 7, so you saw that the lead expanded quite significantly. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh man, this is deja vu. We had a double-digit lead against the Pacers and the Hornets, at least at multiple times, at least in the third quarter at some point in both those games. So we have a lead going into the third quarter again, and I'm just waiting for this Bulls team to blow it. We saw early on in that third quarter the Magic had to call 2 early timeouts, and that to me showed, okay, the Bulls, they look a little bit better, right? They did a little bit better to come out of the half and not just immediately give up a lead, right? But what was interesting in my opinion was Donovan. I think this was kind of one of the bigger moments that was kind of not necessarily talked about a lot. Derrick Jones Jr. had to come out of the game when it was his normal substitution time, right? He came into the game to take out Vooch with about 6 minutes left remaining in that third quarter, but then suddenly Derrick Jones Jr. gets injured. He eventually does return, so that's obviously good. But what I was looking at, I was like, okay, for some reason, we decided not to go ahead and put Drummond in there. This was kind of one of those games where I thought Drummond was kind of necessary because Mo Wagner was kind of beating us up, and if you're going to take out Vooch, then you're seriously sacrificing size against this very lengthy and tall Magic team already that already outsizes you. So I thought Drummond could have at least had a little bit of run in this one, but we decided not to do that. And so suddenly Vooch is thrusted back into the game early into his rest, right? And I was like, okay, maybe hopefully this doesn't mess up anything, but it kind of, you saw this Bulls team, they started to not look too good suddenly after that substitution happened. Um, but luckily the Bulls, they kind of figured it out towards the end of that third quarter. They were able to kind of bring themselves back together, and then into the fourth quarter, we saw some, scary moments for sure. But I felt a little bit better about that fourth quarter just in general. And I'm not here to say it was ball movement because at the end of the day, I don't want to hear that it was ball movement. It wasn't. It was more so that the Bulls they hit their shots when they needed to, right? Patrick Williams hit 2 threes when he was open, right? Um, and we saw obviously Levine and DeRozan, they hit some big shots as well. So at the end of the day, it just comes down to hitting shots. The game in general is just going to slow down. Okay, I don't care what sort of team you are. Even the Warriors, when they're one of the fastest playing teams in the league, like in that fourth quarter, the game slows down for them, right? So why should it be different for the Bulls, right? So the game is, no matter what, it's going to slow down. And here's a stat I'm actually going to bring up for you guys that I think it's very interesting to kind of point out here. So everyone talks about, sorry, my mic peaked again. Hold on, I'm lowering that still. Sorry. Everyone wants to talk about the Bulls and their isolation, okay? Now, something that was brought to my attention is this, okay? If you look at the points per possession for each player, okay, per isolation, okay, we're talking about only isolation, and this is strictly just them scoring, okay. You look at in general, obviously, I mean, you got guys like Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Kyrie Irving, guys very, very well known to be isolation players, right? DeMar DeRozan right here is still pretty high up on this list. Now, when you take into account for guys that actually do isolate a ton, right, or at least isolate frequently enough to kind of actually be on this board, right? So when I click this, Aaron Holiday is at the highest, but you see here like he rarely isolates, right? And even Larry Markkinen, as a guy who is going to be an all-star this year, like he also doesn't really isolate. So like these guys, that are up here, like they don't really typically isolate. It gets down to, Colin Sexton and Kyrie Irving, like, then we're starting to officially talk about isolation players. And you see here DeMar DeRozan's, he's averaging 1.2 points per possession per isolation, okay? So when we talk about this Bulls team slowing down the pace and guys isolating, in my opinion, I honestly think it's the right decision because this Bulls team in general has struggled so much on offense, but this is a form of in general, this is one of the best forms of offense for the Bulls, okay? The Bulls in general as a team, they average the most points per possession per isolation, okay, as a team in general, okay? And obviously when you have DeRozan and Levine, that's going to happen, right? You're going to have a high points per possession per isolation because those two guys can isolate and score. But here's the caveat. The Bulls, they're 19th in isolation possessions per game. Okay, so everyone likes to talk about the Bulls slowing it down and they're isolating a lot. When you actually look at the numbers, they're one of the less frequent isolation teams in the NBA, but they have one of the best isolation scorers in DeMar DeRozan, and then a pretty damn good number 2 option in Levine. Okay, so in general, I think everyone's saying like the game slows down, etc., but to me, I'm here to say that the isolation actually is supposed to happen. Okay, and the Bulls actually, if you look at it, they don't isolate a lot. Okay, they're pretty good at isolating, but they don't isolate. So I think this is something that we as Bulls fans need to kind of think about. If you look at the frequency for a guy like, for example, DeMar DeRozan, okay, this is frequency per game, right? Like DeRozan, his frequency is less than a guy like Kyrie Irving, right? And I feel like, obviously Kyrie Irving is well known to be an isolation player, but I think people talk as if DeRozan is isolating like 1 out of every 4 possessions, but he doesn't. He just straight up doesn't. Okay, and so I think it's something that we need to kind of get out of our heads a little bit, because we're seeing guys around the league, okay, that aren't necessarily as good of a scorer as DeMar DeRozan, but they're isolating at a higher frequency, right? Kevin Durant, obviously, he should be isolating a decent amount, but even a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who I feel like isn't really known to be an isolation player that much, like he's at 17% this year. Lillard's, at 18%, right? So in general, DeRozan isolates very infrequently compared to some of the other all-stars in this league that are very capable of isolating. Now I'm gonna go ahead and reload this. If you're wondering about Zach LaVine and his and his isolation scoring, um, so as you can see, Luka Doncic, he gets close to eight possessions of isolation per game, right? So if you're DeMar DeRozan, you get close to 4. Zach LaVine, his isolation's at 11.7 frequency, so he is very rarely isolating for a guy that can 100% score. Like, he's isolating less than Bradley Beal, right? Who I think Bradley Beal is known for being that off-ball 2 guard, right? And so Zach gets about 3 isolation attempts per game, which is much lower than a lot of guys, right? That's lower than Trae Young. That's lower than DeJounte Murray, right? It's honestly very interesting to kind of look at. Like, Zach doesn't really isolate that often, but yet again, we talk as if he does isolate a ton. And for a guy that gets very infrequent isolations, his efficiency honestly is pretty damn good. Again, the Bulls don't isolate that often; they just straight up don't. So I think it's something that we as Bulls fans need to kind of get away from this whole we should stop isolating type stuff. No, the Bulls should isolate actually. I do think that people are kind of scared of like the double team, and I totally understand why. But if we as a team can't get out of the double team and can't take advantage of a double team, then we don't deserve to win. So I think it's something that we need to start looking at differently as Bulls fans. Isolation scoring isn't like that horrible of an idea, especially when you have guys that can isolate very, very well. See if I can put this up here. I forgot to so if you just want to look at it, okay? So points per possession, okay? The Bulls are tied for first in the NBA in points per possession as a team, per isolation, okay? So we're right up there at the top of the top, okay? So we're next to the Brooklyn Nets and the Utah Jazz, right? They don't isolate that often, but they're also up there. But like even a team, for example, like the Dallas Mavericks, who has Luka Doncic, right? The isolation is they're obviously like an isolation team. Spencer Dinwiddie also isolates a ton on that team, and it's effective for them. And the Bulls, for example, you see here, they're at the very tip of they're at the very top here, and yet they isolate 6.2% of the time, which again is, last time I checked it was 19th. I don't know where exactly this is, but it's down here. Okay, so I want us to get away from this whole the Bulls isolate and they slow down the game and suddenly it's bad. Like, that's bad basketball. So when you see DeRozan, take a fadeaway mid range, or see Zach, take a mid range, or like a straight up just crossover 3, like that's one of our best sources of offense. But Billy Donovan has tried to get away from this offense, and again, the offense this year has gotten worse. We're worse on offense this year than last year. And what did we do all of last year? We isolated DeRozan all of last year, right? I do think that I think Billy Donovan has the right intentions in mind, but I think his idea of doing things is backwards. I truly do. I think he's not exactly looking at the numbers. He's thinking of, okay, we need to play better team basketball, but in my opinion, like, isolation scoring, okay, like the Brooklyn Nets, in my opinion, they do this well, right? If KD's there, obviously, but they play team basketball, quote unquote, even though that they have 2 of the best isolation scorers in the league, right? Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, they isolate so often, and that's like one of their best forms of offense. But they're 30-19, and I don't think they have the best defensive squad out there. But Jacques Vaughn has said, look, we're going to isolate, and we're going to make sure that we surround these guys with the correct pieces to isolate, right? Yuta Watanabe, for example, is a perfect guy you want next to an isolation player. He's a dude that is a catch-and-shoot three-point shooter that is arguably the best catch-and-shoot three-point shooter in the league right now. And people don't really talk about him, but the Brooklyn Nets, they have a guy like him. They have Seth Curry. They have a Joe Harris, etc., etc. But I think also it comes down to having a guy like Nick Claxton, right? Um, I'm not saying the Brooklyn Nets are perfect, but they're better than what Steve Nash was trying to do, which was like the speed up offense. And Jacques Vaughn is like, we're gonna take what we do best, and then we're gonna play around it. Obviously, their team I think is a little bit better structured around it, which is kind of the reason why it's so interesting to see that the Bulls don't have much 3-point shooting, AK. But I hope that we as Bulls fans we start kind of figuring out like we need to start understanding that there are very big numbers to kind of look at here. I'm not saying we should isolate every single possession. That's not something I want. I'm not saying that. But I think at the end of the game, when it is that crunch time, I do think isolation scoring is one of our best opportunities. Okay, so this whole give it to DeRozan and get out of the way type stuff, like I think maybe on the last shot attempt that's not necessarily the best idea because I think you can potentially get like a catch and shoot opportunity on a sideline out of bounds play. But when we're talking about it's the last 2 minutes and we're trading baskets back and forth, like at the end of the day it needs to be in DeRozan's hands, and then if he doesn't have it, if he gets doubled, then it has to be in Zach's hands. Okay, because that it is a reliably consistent offensive weapon for us. But we don't isolate. We just straight up don't. I think people think we do isolate, but if you actually look at it, we're running the pick and roll out. We're running a lot of post ups for some reason when the game really does slow down. And I think that's kind of where the Bulls get a lot. Like they seriously get in trouble is when they go to the post up when the game's slowing down. They try to run the pick and roll high at the top of the key when it's like we don't need to do that just yet. That's where the Bulls team gets stuck on offense. That's where they slow down on offense. And I hope that we can start to get away from that. But yeah, moving forward, it's just something to keep in mind. So when the Bulls, for example, as Magugla said, or sorry, Cucklord said in this, that the fourth quarter was scary. Like for sure, it was scary. And I think people were kind of start complaining. They complained about Zach taking a mid-range shot over Mo Wagner. But that to me is what the Bulls do best. Like I'm gonna take when DeMar DeRozan has a mismatch. I'm gonna take the isolation. When Zach has a mismatch, I'll take the isolation. That's fine. But obviously then it's on the other guys. If they collapse on the isolation player, then it's on the other guys to make sure that they pick up the slack and put in shots, which Patrick Williams tonight hit some big threes, and it was off of a lot of isolation opportunities. So it's just something to keep in mind. Again, I'm not saying we should run isolation all the time. That's not what I'm saying at all. But come down at the end of the stretch, I do think that it is one of the best options for this Bulls team, and not running the post up for Vucevic, which I think people continuously want Vooch to always be posting up. Which again, let's not get into that discussion right now. Shout out to DeRozan for hitting 21% of his made threes on the season in this game. So yeah, DeMar DeRozan had hit 5 threes in this one. He was 5 of 5. I was honestly personally really shocked. I don't know what it is about DeRozan this year, but he has taken less threes in general. I've wanted DeRozan to kind of shoot more threes this year. Just because I do think that even if he is only shooting 32%, I think that it's good enough where I'm like, yeah, you need to shoot it, because we're seeing still that everyone talks about the lack of spacing on this Bulls team. Well, unfortunately, DeMar DeRozan is a part of that lack of spacing, right? Or lack of 3-point shooting, I should say, more specifically. So, if he can extend a little bit to that 3-point line, I only think it could help this Bulls team. I'm not saying he should be taking 5 threes a game, but if he's open, I do want him to shoot it. So he decided against the Orlando Magic out of all teams, and I apologize, David, for that, but it's what happened. Yeah, I don't know what happened in this one, but DeRozan just decided to light it up tonight from 3-point range. If you do not know, David is a Magic fan. He's a longtime friend of mine. He is a Magic fan, so he got the early win against us when Zach had that horrible game and Vooch missed those free throws. But we get this one at least, which is a necessary win. It's a very necessary win for this Bulls team moving forward. And this season, I think, is officially screwed for this Bulls team, because you blew it against the Pacers, you blew it against the Hornets. Like, I don't personally see you getting to that 60 anymore, but Yeah, it shouldn't. It still doesn't give him any excuse to just start dropping games here, moving forward. All right. I do. Hold on. I'm getting spammed with a notification from uh the YouTube stream stuff here. So hold on, give me just a second. I'm gonna try to. I want to see if I can raise the bit rate. Um, let's see if this works. I'm just testing this out. Okay, yeah, I can. I'm gonna raise the bit rate considerably here. Uh, I'm gonna raise this to. I'm gonna raise it to 7K. Okay, there we go. Cool. All right, good. Now the stream should be a little bit more stable now. All right. Zach 1 of 14 early against Orlando was statistically a top 5 worst shooting performance against Orlando ever, according to Magic broadcast I watch. I'm not shocked, and I honestly think that if Zach played against any team, it would have been statistically one of the worst performances we've ever seen against any team. So I'm not shocked by that. But you know, it happens. He's coming off injury. We move on. Obviously, then he puts up 32 tonight, so you know it's in the past. So yeah, not complaining too hard. Um, Obviously, he needs to do better than 1 for 14 in general, but you know what? It's just one of those games for Zach. But tonight he showed up. So just something to keep in mind. Moving forward, I just want to talk about the isolation because I think this is important for us Bulls fans to kind of think about. When Stacey King says that's a bad shot, we got to move the basketball. When Kendall Gill says we got to move the basketball and play through Vooch in the post, the numbers don't say that. Okay, the numbers straight up do not say that, right? The numbers say very opposite of that. The Bulls actually they're one of the best. They pass. They're one of the top teams in passes per game. Okay, so it's not like this Bulls team doesn't pass the ball. They pass the ball a lot, but obviously it's not really leading to much because the supporting cast around this Bulls team. It's a lot of guys that I like to categorize as the catch and think guys. Okay, you catch the ball at the 3-point line and they don't do anything. They don't shoot it. They don't look to drive it. They try to pass it first, but then no one's open. It's the definition of a catch and think team. And if you want a clip of a catch and think, possession. Okay, let's just watch this. Okay, this is the definition of the Bulls, in my opinion. I apologize, that was very loud. This is the Bulls as a catch and think team. So Patrick Williams on the break, he goes in. Okay, nothing's there. Pass out to Ayo DeSumo. Why is Ayo not taking this? Right? In my opinion, Ayo DeSumo needs to take the shot. This is a wide open three on the fast break that Patrick Williams created by himself. Shoot this. I understand Ayo has struggled, but you have to shoot this. You're a guard. We've seen that you're very capable of shooting that shot. So he kind of hesitates, he kind of thinks, and then he drives and he gets nowhere. So then he throws it back out to Vucevic, and then he drives, right? And now he throws it back out to Patrick Williams, and then throws it over to here, and we get the exact same shot the first time, and then Ayo just misses it. It's like, shoot the first one, right? And if you're not going to shoot the first one, then you can't just hesitate and think about it, and then kind of half drive it, and then throw it back out. Like you gotta shoot it confidently, or you gotta drive with force. But you can't just do the half little drive that Ayo did. It's hence the catch and think. So I think when we start talking about ball movement with this team, like yes, there needs to be ball movement in general, but they don't have the personnel to be getting 25 plus assists per game consistently and winning off of that. Because they don't have shot makers or the role players. They don't have enough shot makers on this squad to do that sort of offense, right? They don't have enough 3-point shooters to reliably do that. So it then comes down to DeMar DeRozan isolation at the end of the game, which again the numbers say it's the right thing to do. It's one of the best. It's one of the best offensive options for the Bulls, right? But you know, I'm not the coach. I'm not Billy Donovan. I'm not here to say this or that, or you know, I'm here to give my opinion. But I'm not here to change the Bulls' offense because I can't. So that's that. All right. now that I've gone through this Magic game, I want to talk very quickly about the Hornets game. I was not able to watch the entire game. That's the reason why I didn't stream. After that one, I was able to catch bits and pieces. I saw the ending. I did not see the implosion in the third quarter at all. I did kind of go back and look a little bit, and it didn't look good. Obviously, the Bulls have been just imploded recently in the second half. I was able to catch a little bit of the first quarter, so I saw the Bulls get off to kind of a rocky start, but then I guess they kind of figured it out in that second quarter, right? And then they imploded in that third quarter, and then obviously imploded in that fourth. So that's that. So obviously rough there. Just want to give my little 2 cents on that. Now I want to get to the kind of the biggest part of the stream right now, which is I do want to talk about trades here, because suddenly now this Bulls team, I said this was their last opportunity to kind of change the narrative of this season, right? It's been one ridiculously bad season. You're basically been under 500 for a while. If you win against Atlanta, which you did, you go then and beat the Pacers and then take over the Pacers in the standings, and then you go and beat Charlotte in Orlando. Suddenly you're looking at this team being, I believe, a game over 500, right? And who knows, at that point you're probably maybe the 8th seed, right? But maybe you're the 7th seed. Maybe the Knicks or Heat kind of also went on the losing streak when this happened, but you decide not to do that. So to me, the narrative of the season is officially set in stone. There is nothing that is going to change the narrative of the season because it is officially set. Okay. Sorry, that's. Now moving forward from here on out, I'm going to be very interested to see what is going to be happening, and I would hope that these bad games that we've just had, right, it's going to force the front office to at least make some sort of change. Now, here's the thing that I want Bulls fans to understand. This trade deadline that's going to be coming up here, okay, whether you think the Bulls should be blowing it up or you think they should be retooling, obviously staying pat is not the best decision here, or at least, not doing anything. I'm also aware, though, that this Bulls team, it's not just the core needs a rework. This entire team needs a rework, okay? So obviously Lonzo Ball, we got another update on that today. Okay, Lonzo Ball, he's out for the year. Okay, let's just say it as it is. I know he posted that video on social media and everybody was like, oh my god, he potentially is coming back. No, that went away. Okay. I even said that video made me feel worse about the situation, because I'm like, you're this far and it's coming up on a year since you've played a game and you're just starting running and you're barely dunking. Okay, so good for him that he is starting, right? But we got the update today that Billy Donovan said that he's nowhere near returning. Hence, I'm gonna guess that after this All-Star break coming up, that Lonzo Ball is going to be deemed out for the rest of the season. And it'll be interesting to see what the Bulls do from with that information. But even before that can happen, this Bulls team in general needs a point guard, right? And as much as I love Ayo Dosunmu, this team needs a better playmaker at that point guard position. And I do think Ayo has kind of filled in admirably, but he is in year 2. He had a very good rookie year, but we did see him struggle a little bit in his rookie year. And again, I love Ayo, but right, for just moving forward in general, whether that's him blossoming into this point guard or the Bulls going to get a point guard, the Bulls need a point guard. And I say this for multiple reasons. One, Lonzo is not returning anytime soon. Okay, I'm at the point now where I'm not even certain that he's going to be playing at the start of next season. Okay, and I think that is a very genuine possibility right now. It's harsh of me to say that. It's very bad of me to be that pessimistic of this right now. But at the end of the day, we're looking at a team that needs this guy, needs a point guard, and this guy is not anywhere close, and it's been over a year now since his injury happened. Okay, so to me, I honestly am thinking that Lonzo Ball might not be healthy to start next season, and I've been saying that I think that this team needs to start considering, like, maybe this is career ending. Lonzo himself will never say it's career ending, right? Him and his camp will never say it's career ending because they want money, right? If Lonzo, ends his career, like he's never getting paid ever again. But there is a possibility, even if he just plays a couple of games, right, in the last year of his contract with the Bulls, that he can still get a payday, right? Because we know how good of a player he is when he is healthy, and some team is going to be willing to take that risk. But if I'm the Bulls, I'm thinking to myself, well, something needs to happen here, right? I need maybe a doctor from the outside organization, or maybe Lonzo Kent needs to actually just be straight up and tell the truth about what his injury is. But it's gotten to the point now where it's like this is past Derrick Rose, issues, right? Derrick Rose, yes, he had all the knee issues, but at least he came back, right? Lonzo, to me, I'm at this point now where I don't think he's ever coming back. And I think if you're the Bulls, you have to think this way. You have to prepare as if Lonzo is never, ever, ever coming back. Okay? Hence, you still need a point guard. Number two, even if Lonzo Ball does come back, I'm worried that he is going to be having issues with his knee still, right? He could very easily come back and then injure himself again. And even when he does come back, he's going to be on a minutes restriction for a very long time. And I don't think that he's going to be handling the point guard duties that much. I honestly think right now that Lonzo Ball, his best interest is to be a wing here on out, right? Not put as much pressure on his legs, less drives, right? Just be a catch and shoot guy, and also a defender. I think that's where he's going to be at his best. Hence, again, even if Lonzo Ball does come back and is healthy, this Bulls team needs a point guard, because to me, he's going to be playing that wing position. Because I just don't see how he's going to be able to run the pick and roll effectively if his knee is going to be that much of a problem. If he's going to have any chance of being on the court, he's not going to want to put stress on that knee again. So let's kind of limit his stress. And again, I've always said Lonzo is more of a two guard than a point guard, but I get hate for saying it, but I just think it's just a fact. So even if the Bulls decide we're going to rebuild, or if they decide that they're going to retool, at the end of the day, they need a point guard. And again, it could be either Io blossoming into that point guard, which, I hope he has that year 3 leap that we all kind of expect from guys. But if it's not going to be him, it has to be someone else from outside the organization, because Lonzo Ball is not coming back anytime soon. So I want to just kind of put that out there as something that maybe we as Bulls fans need to look for initially at this trade deadline, because you know what? We might be looking for a point guard for the future and not just a point guard for now, because of how serious this Lonzo Ball injury. So put that out there. Just in both scenarios, whether they blow it up or they retool, you need a point guard no matter what. Now, I'm officially at the point now where I do think that DeMar DeRozan should be traded. I think this Bulls front office is very much against DeMar DeRozan being traded. At least for the rest of this season. Now, I can understand why they do that, but in my opinion, it would be best to move at the deadline. But if they're not going to do that, that's fine. But we'll get to that in a second. But in my opinion, DeMar DeRozan should be moved. But the other thing is this: if I'm saying that DeMar DeRozan should be moved, okay, obviously that means that Nikola Vucevic should also probably be moved also. And he's about to be an unrestricted free agent. I heard Casey Johnson talk about it in pregame today at NBC Sports Chicago. I've been saying it all this entire season that even if Vooch has a good year, if the Bulls are genuinely not going to bring him back, right, you have to move him. You have to get something in return for him. And there has been no contract extension talks with him since the beginning of the season, which I don't even know if that was legit or not. That was reported by a source that is not very trustworthy. So if you're not actually going to bring him back, and there's no certainty that he's going to return to this Bulls team after this season, then you got to look to move him. I do think that Vucevic has had a very solid year. You look at his numbers, his shooting percentages have increased drastically compared to last year. His three-point percentage is up from, I believe, 31% last year to 37% this year. Like, there is obviously some good stuff here with Vucevic that if the Bulls decide to re-sign him or give him that contract extension for maybe a year, I'd be fine with that, but I'd also then look to move him then a little bit later on. But if that contract extension is not coming up, then he needs to get moved now, because we're risking losing him for nothing in the offseason. So to me, priority number one right now, because of this recent stretch where the Bulls lost all these games, like, I don't see this Bulls team digging themselves out of this hole. So if they can't dig themselves out, then there's no reason to hold on to Vooch for the rest of the season. You got to move him now. if you're not going to plan on bringing him back. So it's either give him that contract extension, and again, it'll be a very short-term extension, or you got to move him now, right? That's the two options, in my opinion, at the table. Because then if you're going to let him play the rest of the season on your team, but then risk free agency with him, I guess a sign and trade is a possibility, and you still get something in return for him, but I just don't see that happening personally. I think that teams would just rather outright sign him and not trade anything for him. So I just think you need to move him. But we're gonna see about that. Now, when it comes to Zach LaVine and his status, I'm looking around on Twitter, and a lot of Bulls fans they're full out on Zach. Like they're saying all sorts of stuff like we need to move Zach for this and that. And here's what I'm gonna say. Like as a big Zach LaVine fan and supporter of his game, like I'm aware that he has had struggles this year, and he is he's nowhere near perfect as a player. Okay, he has had his struggles, but what we have to understand here is even in this so-called bad season for Zach, like this is like, you know, when people say that this has been an atrocious season for him, these are his numbers. Okay, like these are still overall pretty good numbers, and this is after him having a pretty rough stretch recently due to his hand injury that he's been dealing with. So he's averaging close to 24 points per game. He was at 24 points per game 2 weeks ago. Okay, his 3-point percentage is down to 37% due to his most recent shooting stretch, but that was at 40% 2 weeks ago. Okay, his field goal percentage is still relatively good for a guard at 46%. I expect that to be higher if Zach LaVine is right. So, to me, this is his down year, and we're still getting this sort of level of production, which I think Bulls fans aren't exactly realizing that. Like, I think Bulls fans think he's averaging like 17 points per game on horrible efficiency, which he's not. Now, if the Bulls are actually going to be looking to completely tear this down, okay, we're talking about the Bulls just flat out blowing it all up, trading everybody. I'm talking everybody except all the young players on this team, and that includes Lonzo Ball. I think that it would be in their best interest to not trade Zach LaVine now. And I'm not saying that just so I could be a fan of him for longer. I'm saying that because I think it's important for this Bulls team to make sure that they get the most value out of him in a trade. So right now, at this very moment, Zach LaVine's value is not that high, right? He is dealing with multiple injuries. He's coming off a knee surgery, and this is his down year, right? I expect his numbers, no matter what, to be better next year if he is going into this offseason healthy, okay? So I know that is kind of like a big if, but in my opinion, I feel like Zach has kind of shown that he's going to be healthy, okay? I know he is a little bit banged up here and there, but like he's going to be healthy. He has played for a consistent amount of games now, to the point where I'm like, we have to get rid of this whole narrative of like, oh, knee issue, etc., etc. Like, it's something to be aware of, but it's not something that's going to prevent teams from trading for him, okay? So if we're going to be trading Zach, I think we hold on to him and wait for him to have a little bit of a better season in a sense, because there is no rush to trade Zach, okay? He's under contract for the next next 3 seasons guaranteed, 4th season with the player option. So there's no rush to trade him. Like, we don't need to trade him immediately, okay? And if you do not know, a rebuild's going to take a lot of time. So what I would compare this to is what the Oklahoma City Thunder did when they traded Russell Westbrook. They got back Chris Paul, and everyone's kind of like, well, you're rebuilding. Like, what are you doing, right? In this case, it'd just be similar, except you're not trading for anybody, but you'd hold on to Zach and wait for his value to increase again, which, you know, OKC, they got Chris Paul, his value shot back up again, and then they look to move him. So if I was the Bulls, if they're actually going to be moving Zach, that's what I would do. I would wait after this season, let Zach have a fully healthy offseason again, and get himself right, and then I think he's going to come back and be averaging 25 points per game plus on much better efficiency from the field. And if DeMar DeRozan isn't there, then I expect those numbers just to go up even higher. Hence, then his trade value is just only going to increase. His max contract is not going to hinder the Bulls from being able to make trades. Okay, if they're actually looking to move him, he's too good of a player, and he's also in his prime. That contract is not going to stop teams from trading for him. Okay, if they actually think that they can make a run for Zach, and they think he's a very big piece to their puzzle, they're going to look to move him or get him. And give up a lot for him. Okay, so it's just something that we need to keep in mind about this trade deadline. If the Bulls are actually looking to blow it up, right? Not everything's gonna be done at this trade deadline. Okay, I think that Vooch obviously needs to be traded, right? But if we're gonna be moving DeMar DeRozan, if we're gonna be moving Zach, okay, it doesn't have to be at this trade deadline. I would like for DeRozan to be traded at this trade deadline, but if that doesn't happen, then we still have the offseason to do it. With Zach, I'm very much willing to wait another season with him and then make sure we get the most out of him when we trade him, right? Get the most value back in return for Zach if we actually do end up trading him, which we're not going to get right now, so there's no reason for us to do it because we have him under contract for the next 3 seasons. Okay, there's no rush to trade Zach LaVine, so let's wait and make sure we get the most for his value if we're going to be heading that direction. Now, in my opinion, though, I would not be looking to straight up rebuild this team. I think that going through a full-out rebuild is not going to bode well for this team, but I do want to see this team to start playing some of their younger players more and start relying more on those younger players. Hence, keeping, obviously, Patrick Williams, I'd assume, will re-sign Ayo and then start playing Dalen Terry, right? And then if we get this Portland draft pick this year, then obviously be playing our first-round pick in 2023 if we have that pick. And potentially even trade for a first-round pick in this upcoming draft. And I don't know how that would happen necessarily, but, maybe start looking at that. But I would, in my opinion, I'm not looking to go ahead and just full out rebuild this squad. I think that it would be detrimental to just go ahead and start doing that because honestly, man, like Patrick Williams, as much as I love him, like I don't see, two-way superstar guaranteed out of him, right? And if that's not a guarantee, then I'm sitting here thinking that that there's no way that this team is going to be guaranteed that the rebuild's going to go well for them, and they're not going to be stuck and hoping that they can figure out and find a way to get that number one guy. Because, let's say, for example, the Minnesota Timberwolves decided, hey, let's rebuild. Okay, let's trade Rudy Gobert, let's trade Karl Anthony Towns, but we have Anthony Edwards, right? Like, that to me makes the rebuild very enticing because you have a guy like Anthony Edwards on your squad. But the Bulls with Patrick Williams, as much as I love him right now, like I don't think that he has superstar written on him. So is rebuilding actually going to be a viable way for this Bulls team to actually fix themselves and actually start winning again? Because I don't think that's very possible. And the other thing too is, like, I always start thinking, okay, if P. Will isn't going to be that guy, then is his trade value ever going to get to the point where it's like, it was worth rebuilding around Patrick Williams, right? I don't think it would ever get to that point. So it's something just to keep in mind when this Bulls front office is going to be looking at what this Bulls team is what they're going to be doing in the future here. So in my opinion, I would keep Zach around. I want to keep Zach here. He'll play next to Dalen Terry, Patrick Williams, and then hopefully a new center this upcoming offseason, and then figure out the point guard position with Ayo and if Lonzo will return or not, or if you get someone else. That, to me, for 2023-2024 is not that bad of a decision. It's not going to be amazing, but I think we like the team a lot more because we'd be a little bit more well-rounded in terms of having a little bit more two-way players on the squad that way, and also younger players going to be playing. But I'm always going to be looking at this, guys. Like, to me, I don't think the Bulls should be selling themselves short at all when it comes to this sort of stuff. And if next year is kind of like a, quote unquote throwaway year in a sense, right, where it's not that amazing, I can live with it. But then obviously I want this Bulls team to be going and going out there in 2024 free agency with, then at that point would be close to, at least in my opinion, $90 million in cap space, right, for this free agency. Which, again, this is talking about, like, we don't have DeMar DeRozan, and it'd still be 75. Never mind. It'd be so $75 million in cap space. Okay, even if we kept Zach and we kept Lonzo, we kept Dalen Terry, we re-signed Ayo, so that would cut it to about maybe $65 million in cap space. Okay, but you can re-sign Patrick Williams over the cap, so he's not an issue. We can bring him back easily. But this means so that DeMar DeRozan's traded, Vooch is obviously gone, but you are going into a free agency period with a bunch of cap space, which in my opinion this is a great free agency class. But then you're also not only have cap space, but then you also have a bunch of assets now, right? You traded Vooch, you traded DeRozan, and also, in my opinion, and I think Bulls fans are gonna be kind of conflicted about this. I won't be shocked if Alex Caruso is also traded in this scenario because his value right now to me is skyrocketing, and if the Bulls can cash in on that, you do it, right? And I'm kind of shocked to see some Bulls fans not wanting to trade him for 2 first-round picks. If I get 2 first-round picks for Alex Caruso, man, I am doing that immediately. I don't care what anyone says. So, yeah, I think that is something to think about. What's going on, Patrick? Good to see you. Hope there's a team who believes they can be a contender with just one more piece, gives us a ton of picks. Well, good luck finding that salty solution, because you're not going to find that. I don't see it happening. So, good luck trying to figure that one out. That's the reason why I've been saying that, like, Zach, no one's going to give up a bunch of picks unless it's the Lakers, right, which is their very not valuable 2027, 2029 picks, okay? Those are 2 first-round picks, and that to me is, like, the lowest of the low of a trade for Zach, right? I don't see a team right now that is willing to give up, 3 first-round picks for Zach, but come next year when he's playing better, yeah, I can see it definitely happening. I think a team like the Kings, for example, would be very willing to give up a lot. For Zach if he's playing better next year. And again, this is if the Bulls decide to blow it up. With DeMar DeRozan, I don't see it happening right now. I think his trade value we thought is a little bit higher than we expected. Than it actually is. It's not very high. What about the Knicks? No shot. I don't think the Knicks are going to be moving anything right now. I think the Knicks are kind of set in stone about having Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson, and hopefully RJ Barrett blossoms into that sort of guy. I don't see that. I don't see it happening right now for the New York Knicks. I truly don't. And the other reason why I'm saying that is that James Dolan just came out and said that he is not looking to get rid of ownership. So to me, it's just. If James Dolan's going to be there, like, I don't see the Knicks ever making that sort of move. Yeah, there's just no shot. Because I also think that RJ Barrett's value is also just tanking as we kind of speak. Like, he's gotten better this year, but like we can all kind of see that he's never going to be a star. So, yeah. If the time to move RJ Barrett was last year, in my opinion, but they didn't do it. Playing 2K Market League while listening to you, your 2023 6-seed Bulls just got swept in the conference finals by 4th-seed Philly. Sounds about right. Bulls can't beat Joel Embiid for the life of them. So, makes sense. You get swept by Joel Embiid in the playoffs, and then that streak continues. What do you make of the Miles Turner extension? So, I know, Patrick, that you were big on Miles Turner potentially being a Bull. Yeah, this Miles Turner extension is very, very interesting. Part of me is like, okay, the Pacers, they figured out a way that pay him a crap ton of money now and then still kind of keep themselves having some flexibility moving forward, right? So, if you do not know what this is, the Indiana Pacers decided to renegotiate with Miles Turner, okay? So, Miles Turner, his contract, right, was $18 million this season. The Indiana Pacers, they have a bunch of cap space, so what they did is that they renegotiated his contract for this season, and they gave him an extra $17.1 million, okay? And so suddenly that number for him goes from 18 to, I believe, 35, if I'm not mistaken, right? So he's getting paid a crap ton of money this year. But you look at what his contract is going to be moving forward, okay? Let's just pull up Miles Turner, just for now, okay? His contract moving forward from here on out. Oh, it's not updated. Never mind. Let's see. I'm gonna go to Twitter. His contract for after this season, like it's not that much, right? You see it here, okay? It's 20 and 19. Like that is where I think Miles Turner would have gotten in the first place. So I think the Pacers actually did a pretty decent job of this, where they gave him just a crap ton of money this year. And they're like, okay, you know what? We're going to throw a bunch of money for you now, right? Here's your big splash. but then next year you're going to be back down to what we kind of think you should be at, which is 20 and 19, right? Which is kind of already what he's making already. So I think the Pacers did a phenomenal job with this, honestly. And here's the other thing too. People are going to call me crazy, but I actually think that this just raised Miles Turner's trade value. So if for you, Patrick, like, I don't think the Bulls. Obviously, Miles Turner can't be traded for the rest of the season. There's a rule after you sign that extension, you can't be traded for a while. So Miles Turner cannot be traded for the rest of this season, and I don't expect the Pacers to be trading him in the offseason either. But maybe the Bulls are suddenly going to be interested in Miles Turner, maybe in the 2023-24 trade deadline, and he's going to be a very viable option again because he's making not that much money. I think if you're the Pacers, right, like he isn't necessarily like on your timeline, so suddenly it's like, maybe his trade value actually went up in this deal, which Miles Turner's just been in trade talks for the longest time ever, and this deal happened suddenly, and I'm thinking to myself like yeah, he's here for the rest of this year, so like no trade talks for this year, and probably no trade talks for the offseason, but I just think Miles Turner's gonna be back in trade discussions next year because his contract is so affordable again. So I don't know. I just think that it's so interesting to think about. But I think the Pacers did this right. So if they want to keep him, this is good. If they want to trade him, this is also good. So they did a very, very good job with this, in my opinion. Yeah. Who would you rather have on the Bulls, Turner or Ayton? So if the Bulls decide to retool, I want I would like Turner if we're getting, some other better player, at other positions. If the Bulls are going to be rebuilding, I want Ayton for sure. But if the Bulls can't, like, for sure get a better player to surround, like, let's say they keep Zach, they keep Lonzo, but they can't find a better player to kind of surround those pieces with, then, like, I think Ayton would then be better. But if this Bulls team can get another All-Star, for example, like, I would want Miles Turner because I think that he would have a little bit better floor balance and a little bit better balance in the offense for this Bulls team. If there is so-called another All-Star on the roster, so I'm not sure what the Suns are thinking of Ayton right now. I know that everyone keeps thinking that, like, there's just all these issues going on. Like, I think that there is, like, some disconnect there, but I don't necessarily think that it's, like, gotten to the point where Ayton's asking out of Phoenix yet, or Phoenix is looking just to trade Ayton just to get him out of the locker room. So I just think that DeAndre Ayton trade is very out of the realm of possibility right now. We have to wait until next season or maybe a year after that to potentially even think of Ayton being available because this season I think the Suns are actually looking to salvage it because Devin Booker isn't back yet, but once he does come back, I think honestly the Suns are looking all right. I won't be shocked if the Suns suddenly, if when Devin Booker comes back, like they skyrocket up the standings because they're finally healthy again. So yeah, I just don't think Ayton's a possibility on. Obviously Miles Turner's off the table for the rest of the season. So that's someone that's not going to come to the Bulls either. All right, I'm going to pull up one other thing though from Twitter. And I want to hear you guys' thoughts. So this trade was brought to my attention, and I was thinking to myself, like, okay, if the Bulls can get this, okay, and this is a DeMar DeRozan trade, so get ready for this, okay? If the Bulls could get this, like, this to me would be pretty solid, okay? I think it would be a very solid deal to do for DeMar DeRozan. My question is though, is that I just don't think this team that I'm about to pull up here is gonna do this deal. Okay. Sorry, I'm still trying to search for this. All right, here we go. I want to hear you guys' thoughts on this deal. And then we'll discuss it a little bit more in depth. So I'm gonna bring it full screen. Hopefully you guys can see that. Okay, no, can't do that unfortunately. Here, let me just go to the original tweet. All right, so for the Bulls, okay, this is the main package is centered around DeMar DeRozan. Okay. The Bulls would be getting back Justice Winslow, Josh Hart, Keon Johnson, and Shadon Sharp. Obviously, for the Bulls, the big name here is Shadon Sharp. I think a lot of people have been kind of taking notice of Shadon Sharp this year. I have to I'm still kind of on this whole train of I do think that Shadon Sharp is still a little bit overrated in a sense, but he has opened some eyes this year, right? I think a lot of people are always talking about his athleticism and stuff like that. He's had some good moments for sure, but he is a guy that would be a big talent for this team. Obviously, this isn't it. The Bulls will be getting picks from Portland, and what would be more enticing about this is that we already have Portland's pick, but it's lottery protected. So what they would do is that they take away those protections on that pick for this year, and then they would add more picks, like 2025 first round pick that they have, and then maybe even something after that, right? This is who the Bulls would be sending out. They'd be sending out DeMar DeRozan, Goran Dragic, and Marcus Simonovic, which to me, I don't really care about Dragic or Simonovic, honestly. I know some Bulls fans, I know Unstoppable, who's been in here multiple times, says that he wants to see Marco play before he kind of makes a decision on him. The thing is, though, is that we're running out of time with Marco, okay? Next year's last year of his deal, and it's non-guaranteed. So the Bulls can legit cut Marco at any point next year, and it doesn't count very much towards the cap. So to me, Marco's time is very, very limited right now with this Bulls, right? So with this Bulls team. So to me, Marco can just go. I'm willing to let Marco go in this sort of deal. Dragic, you said Dragic. I don't think Dragic is re-signing. He was gonna be a 1-year rental anyway. You got him for the minimum. Go ahead and you can move him. I think that'd be completely fine. And then obviously then you're getting hopefully, so you're guaranteed then to get the Portland pick for this year, right? So again, the Portland pick that is lottery protected those protections are wiped out, right? So we're guaranteed to pick get that Portland pick this year. Then you'd probably get the 2025 Portland pick, and then potentially maybe a pick swap after that, or maybe the 2027 pick. I'm not sure, but that would be the idea, right? With Josh Hart, a guy like Josh Hart, if I'm retooling in a sense, a guy like Josh Hart is a guy I want. He's a phenomenal rebounder. I think that he is a very underrated player. And if I want to retool a team, I want Josh Hart on my team. I think he's a guy that I would like. Keon Johnson's also another young player for this Bulls team that could turn into something decent. Potentially has, maybe has some two-way potential of being that solid two-way player on this team. But a guy like Justice Winslow is obviously known to be like a pretty decent defender, but he's had his ups and downs for his entire career. And I love Justice Winslow at Duke, but his time in the league has been very, very odd, I'll say. So yeah, don't trade him yet. All right, I see you're still here, Unstoppable, so I do appreciate you watching, but I don't know, man. I feel like I'd be willing to do this. If Marco has to be in this deal, I'm willing to put him in there, honestly. There's that. Only saying yeah, because we should get the pick before it turns into a second. So again, that pick does not turn into a second until we don't get it up until 2027, right? If that happens, I'd be very, very shocked. I think the Bulls get that first round pick at some point between now and 2027. But I just would like to guarantee the pick this year and then get a 2025 pick from Portland and then maybe something else like a pick swap. I think that would be, a little bit, that makes this a little bit more enticing compared to some of the other deals, right, that we're kind of seeing thrown around. And reminder, Portland, if you do not know, Portland's kind of struggling, right? They've had some rough moments. Obviously, Damian Lillard has had that 60-point game recently, but they're down here at 12, and they're not guaranteed to make the playoffs this year. So I just think that it would be pretty nice for the Bulls team to get that Portland pick guaranteed this year, right? Because I'm gonna say that if Portland doesn't make if Portland makes the play-in tournament, I do think they have a good chance of making the playoffs because of Lillard, but I don't know if that's a guarantee right now, right? They're a half game behind the play-in, but they continue to drop games where I'm like, you got to win that one. So either way, though, we're looking at a pick that's going to be, if the Trailblazers make it, we're looking at a pick that's going to be 15, 16, 17, right? So I'd still, would take that risk, because if they don't make it, then suddenly we're in the lottery. that Portland pick. So yeah, something to think about. Um, yeah, I think that's the only reason why I think about that. We're pretty much getting sharp in Josh Hart. How do you feel about Winslow and Keon Johnson? Not really feeling those two. So again, Keon Johnson is a guy that I personally I would take. Okay. Especially for a team that is trying to kind of tool themselves. Like a guy, Keon Johnson's a guy that I'd be willing to kind of take a risk on. He's also had some decent moments for Portland this year. I think he's also had some good step up moments. But he's obviously young, right? So that's something to kind of think about. Justice Winslow is a guy that I think like he definitely is that kind of very specific role player that needs to be in like that one specific role to kind of work with. If I'm the Bulls though, I'm just kind of willing to take that flyer. He's only on a contract for 1 year. Okay, like we're not committing to Justice Winslow by any means. Okay, so I think that it's a risk I'm willing to take. If he develops into something right, where he's like that two-way role player suddenly, great. But I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. But if that doesn't happen, right, he's not here for long, right? The only guys we're committing long term to is Keon Johnson and Shadon Sharp. Josh Hart, I believe he has a team option for his last year, right? So there is no long-term commitment to any of these guys, but it's a little bit of a tryout for Keon Johnson and Shadon Sharp to kind of see where they're at, where their potential is, and then obviously we get some vets in here in this trade as well. A guy like Josh Hart to me is a very solid role player that this Bulls team would very, very, very much need. I think Winslow can be very good team for any team moving forward. Read a feature in The Athletic about him recently, and he was deep in depression and alcoholism before the last year. Seems to have turned his life around the last year or so. I didn't know that, but I do appreciate that comment. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that he's doing better, I guess. But yeah, I hope that he continues to do well with that. That's hard to hear though. I'm also not shocked to hear that though. I do think that Justice Winslow, his career has kind of taken a turn where it's like, yikes, you know. I thought he had a lot of promise coming out of college for Duke, but his career's been very up and down. So I'm not shocked to see that he's also had some ups and downs in his personal life. But again, I truly hope that he's going to continue to do better. I didn't realize that was playing. That is the sorry, hold on. Let me move. All right, here we go. Wait, so there'd be a pick or two attached to this deal also for DeRozan? I'd be okay with this deal. So yeah, what I would assume would happen is, again, the Bulls, they have Portland's pick for this year, but it's lottery protected, right? So that lottery protection on that pick, if this trade goes through, that lottery protection goes away. Okay, so no matter what, then the Bulls own Portland's pick for this year, guaranteed, no matter if they make the playoffs or not, right? So that's a plus. Then they throw in a 2025 pick, right? I'm gonna guess it's their own pick, and then potentially do a pick swap after that. That to me would be the deal in a sense. Like, we're not doing this trade unless there's picks involved, obviously. Like, there's no way I'm trading DeMar DeRozan and getting this back without getting first-round picks in return. I want to actually look at Real GM and see what is Portland's picks. Sorry, I'm kind of draft picks. Yeah, so this is what I thought. So the Bulls basically, like, as you can see here, all like this Portland's draft is basically like, we don't know their draft picks for a while because it all depends on this pick that the Bulls have, right? So the Bulls in that Larry Markkinen, deal, right? We got back Derrick Jones Jr. obviously, but we also got back this Portland pick, but it's lottery protected. But it is lottery protected all the way up through 2028. Okay, so basically, if the Trailblazers don't make the playoffs from 2023 through 2028, the Bulls don't get that first round pick at any point, and the Bulls they get a second round pick in 2028. Okay, from Portland. If in this deal that I have brought up, okay, that those protections that Portland has in that pick, that goes away. So the Bulls would fully guarantee themselves the 2023 pick from Portland this year, and then what that does is that opens up legit all the other draft picks for Portland, right? Because right now, because of that Bulls pick, that Bulls trade, because of that pick is sent to Chicago, they can't trade any of these picks. Okay, like if you do not know, because of the protections on these picks, the Portland Trailblazers are not allowed to trade any more of their picks right now because of these protections. Okay, so I think that's also kind of enticing for Portland just in general, just to open themselves up to being actually able to trade those picks, because right now they're stuck, right? They legit can't, like, this is the reason why they can't really make a move right now, is because they can't trade these picks right now. They're legit stuck waiting to see what happens with the Bulls, with the pick that's sent to the Bulls, right? So it's very just weird to see a front office just basically handcuff themselves into being like, we can't trade picks, right? Yeah, I don't know what Portland was exactly thinking in this deal, but they legit cannot trade any of their picks in the future because of this deal. So that's the reason why I also think that Portland might be kind of thinking, oh, we might do this deal just to open ourselves up to being able to make some more moves. It looks like Portland is never ever gonna decide to rebuild, right? They're full on guaranteeing themselves they're full on guaranteeing Damian Lillard to build around him and look to do everything in their willpower to make a team and win with Damian Lillard, which I don't know why they think that, but that's kind of what they're thinking. They just offered a max quote-unquote extension to Jeremy Grant, which, by the way, I don't know if Jeremy Grant's coming back, right? So they traded a first-round pick for Jeremy Grant. I'm not sure if he's coming back or not. We'll see about that. So this is kind of the reason why I'm like, all right, if you're Portland, right, Jeremy Grant might not be a guarantee to come back. You're running out of time with Damian Lillard. Anthony Simons has performed viably this year, and I'm very impressed with his production. But I've always said that if you have Lillard and Simons, you just have the same problem you have with Lillard and McCollum. They're basically two of the same players, both undersized guards, quote unquote, and Simons is a little bit bigger, but they play the same way. They're the exact same type of play style. Neither of them are really a point guard in a sense. So you just have redundancy on this roster in the backcourt that neither of them play defense either. So this team is just not that well constructed. And then you go and get Jeremy Grant, who's nice, but he's not necessarily like an all-star caliber player, right? I think he's kind of fringe, all-star, but he's not guaranteed all-star. So you go and get a guy like DeMar DeRozan, who, yes, does not help defensively, but at least it brings some sort of variation into your offense, right? And with Damian Lillard, he's just getting older, and I've always said smaller guards, they go quicker, and Lillard, in a sense, is a smaller type guard who does rely more on the shooting, so he probably is going to last a little bit longer, but like Lillard's prime years, in my opinion, they're waning, right? I don't really see Lillard being able to kind of continue this level of production for the near future. I mean, his numbers are pretty ridiculous for a dude at his age 32 season, right? We talked about DeMar DeRozan last year. Like, I mean, Lillard, I know he's missed a lot of games, right? He also missed a ton of games last year, but he's averaging 30 points per game. I just don't know if that can continue moving forward with them because, again, he is a smaller guard. He is 6'2", so I'm not exactly too sure of what they're looking at with him and his how long his prime years are gonna continue. But here's Anthony Simons. Anthony Simons has been very, very impressive in my opinion this year, and he's averaging 22, which is great. if you're gonna keep him, Lillard, and Simons, right? Like you gotta surround them with, different guys in the offense, right? Because I just think Lillard and Simons are very similar players, and obviously Lillard's better, but it just to me looks like Lillard and McCollum 2.0, which just shows you like nothing changed, right? Nothing changed after you traded McCollum. I thought the McCollum trade, in my opinion, was so good because it's like, okay, finally, you've gotten away from this redundancy between Lillard and McCollum, who just play the exact same way. But instead, though, you go and draft a guy and then raise him to be the exact same way that CJ McCollum played. Like, it's very similar styles, and so I'm just like, okay, if you're Portland, what are you going to do? And then obviously for them, Jeremy Grant, who's, he's had a relatively decent season. I just don't think that he's that great of a defender. I think people think of him as a defender. He's not really a defender anymore. But he's not guaranteed to come back. And he's had a relatively good year, but he's not guaranteed to come back. So that's also the reason why I'm like, maybe Portland's thinking of doing this deal. So just something to think about. Obviously, though, here's the thing. This Bulls front office has been, at least what's been thought of right now, and this is what Casey Johnson reported as of today. The Bulls front office, according to sources around the league, okay, and we're not talking about the Bulls front office themselves, we're talking about other executives talking to Casey Johnson about the Bulls, okay, so it's not AK and Mark Eversley, but what they have said is that they think the Bulls, they're thinking of keeping Zach, they're keeping DeRozan, they're probably not going to be necessarily trading Caruso, but Nikola Vucevic is probably going to be a guy looked to be moved, right? Unless a contract extension is agreed upon. So that's the reason why I'm like, I don't think this move happens, because this move would have to happen now. If I'm not mistaken, Justice Winslow is not under contract for next year for the Portland Trailblazers. So that's the reason why it's like this move would have to happen now. But let's say this is offered to the Bulls, right? And it's with the picks. I'm talking about the 2023 pick from Portland and 2025 pick from Portland, and then a pick swap. Like I'd be willing to take that deal if I was the Bulls right now. But I'm not entirely sure what they're thinking, because I'm hearing all kinds of stuff right now on the internet, and then to me the most reliable source is Casey Johnson, right? But he's not even getting his info from the Bulls front office. He's getting his info from other executives around the league. Like, it's not AK telling Casey Johnson, okay, here's what we're planning. Like, it's the others, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, what AK has clearly done is that he's been very, very, very secretive with all of his moves, right? He has never ever released to the public at all what his next decisions are. I think the only reason why we knew about Lonzo Ball happening is because the New Orleans Pelicans were involved, right? And those were talks that were going on for a long time. So that's the reason why that information got leaked out. But if we didn't have to go do a sign and trade for Lonzo, I'm not sure if we would have known about Lonzo Ball until we officially got the notice that, hey, he's coming to the Bulls, right? So I think this is the reason why I'm like, I don't really know what's going to happen with this Bulls front office. I truly don't know what they're thinking. I don't think they're going to hit the rebuild button, but I also think that they might be aware that DeRozan and Vucevic's time, it's going, right? There's not a lot of time left for those two guys. So we'll see what's going to be what's going to be going on. Drew Eubanks is on the books for Portland next season? I don't believe so. It doesn't look like it. Yeah, he's not. So yeah, Justice Winslow's also not here. So again, if the Bulls are going to make this deal, it has to be at this trade deadline. Yeah, here's the situation here. So here's Justice Winslow. This is the last year of his deal. All right. So what does our pick situation look like? So our pick situation is this. It's, again, we don't have our pick this year, right? That is going to the Magic, unless we get top 4. Okay. Then we have Portland's pick if it's 15-30. Hence, if Portland makes the playoffs, we get their pick. We don't have a second rounder. That's our pick situation for this year. Moving forward, we're gonna have our own if that Magic pick goes, if that, if the pick goes to the Magic this year, we have our own, okay? And then we'll have Portland's pick if we don't get Portland's this year. But just in a sense, in my opinion, in my head, next year, we have our own pick. That's just in my head. 2025, we don't have our pick because that was in the DeMar DeRozan deal. We sent that to San Antonio, and that's protected 1 through 10. So I don't think we have our pick in 2025, but then we should have our pick in 2026. Yeah. What do you think about this trade? Warriors, Caruso, and Drummond, Bulls, Wiseman, Kuminga, and 2023 first round pick. Salty solution. I hate to say that, but I think you're actually insane. If the Warriors agree to that trade, the Bulls pulled off a fleece. That is not happening. If the Bulls could get Wiseman and Kuminga and a pick from the Warriors for Caruso and Drummond, that's insane. There's no way that's happening. I'm here to tell you that right now. That is never, ever going to happen. And I don't even think the money works out, if I'm not mistaken. I have to double check that. I don't think the money works. Yeah, I this is the reason why I want to make this very clear to Bulls fans. Like, when we talk about potentially, like, rebuild trades, right? If we're talking about rebuild trades, okay, like, we have to make sure that they're like legitimate trades here. Okay, it's not just like, oh, we trade DeMar DeRozan and we get 3 young players and we also get multiple first round picks. No, like, it has to make sense for both sides. So, I think a lot of people, when they look at this deal, they're kind of like, is this good? Like, I don't know. And obviously we throw in picks on top of it, but I think a lot of Bulls fans are looking at this like, no shot, we need more for DeRozan. I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't think we get much more for DeMar DeRozan. I think the biggest thing is obviously the picks, and then we get shit on Sharp. To me, that's a big win if we get shit on Sharp. I'm only saying that because Warriors are already paying so much money to the players. No way they can pay everyone. They're paying everyone. Salty solution. I don't know if you know. They're paying everyone. They're projected to have a payroll of like $468 million. That's their salaries plus luxury tax next year. Sorry, it's in the 500s, I should say. Or sorry, it's close to 500. So it's like 468, I think, next year. They're gonna pay it. Like, they've already shown that they're gonna be willing to pay everything. So everyone. So I don't. They're not doing that. No shot. I want to know why they still haven't said how many years they extended Billy for. I also am pissed off about that. I want to know as well. To me, I'm gonna flat out say it. I know people are gonna be talking about that Vucevic trade as AK's like biggest mistake, and sure, it was a mistake. But to me, that Billy Donovan extension, that might be AK's biggest mistake, right? Like, to me, this was Billy Donovan's like one of his biggest years as a coach, because to me, this was an evaluation year for him, and that doesn't mean that next year he's gone, because he's still under contract for next year. But I think this year, it's like this is like one of those big years for Billy Donovan to kind of show like, yeah, I should continue to be the coach of this team for years to come. But instead, they go ahead and give him an extension just for making the playoffs, and they made the first round. They got eliminated 5 games, and they just gave it to him. Like, if anything, like, this year should kind of show you like, oh, if we just waited, then we wouldn't have to have locked in Billy Donovan, because he has not looked very good this year as a coach. And I'm not here to say that Billy Donovan is boiling. He's not. I'm not here to say he's a top 5 worst coach in the league, but he is very clearly not, in my opinion, a top 15 coach. And I would also argue he's not a top 20 coach right now. So I think it's very interesting to kind of look at. But I'm also going to end it with this. This Bulls team, construction-wise, they have a lot of holes. So this doesn't all fall on Donovan, obviously. Like, there are so many issues with this roster that we just can't be blaming Billy Donovan. But what I am going to be blaming Billy Donovan for is that this Bulls team is doing a lot of things wrong, in my opinion. Hence, we're posting up Vooch a little bit too often. Hence, we're actually not running a lot of isolation when I think we should be running isolation. This new offensive scheme that he's implemented this year, where we're passing the ball, we're one of the top teams in passes per game in the league, it has not worked. It has not translated into being top 10 in assists per game this year. It has not translated into better offense. Instead, it's been worse offense. I do give him credit for the defense, because the defense has been actually relatively solid this year. As much as we complain about the Bulls and their lack of defense, the defense has been consistently top 15 all year. I know we dipped a little bit below at some point, but like the defense has been ranked in the top 15 for a decent amount of the season, so I'll give them that. But there's a lot of stuff going on that I'm like, I don't think you're using your players to the best of their capabilities, right? I think Zach LaVine is not being his off-ball game is not being used. I think DeRozan's isolation game is suddenly not being used as often. And I don't know why we're posting a Vooch so often now. Like, and I say so often, it's still pretty rare, but like he's getting more post touches than I think he should. Um, and we're still in the bottom of the league in paint points per game. We're obviously one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. So we're heavily reliant on the mid range, a lot of it's because of DeMar DeRozan, obviously, but that's not how you should be running a team in modern day basketball. Also, the fans that says we should rebuild, it's not going to happen. That's why Billy left OKC because he didn't want to go through rebuild. Yeah, I seriously don't think we're rebuilding. And obviously, Billy, is a big reason why. Right, there's a signal from the front office saying that yeah, we're not rebuilding. What I will say though is that I don't think Billy's going to leave the team or like try to or wouldn't be necessarily opposed to like let's say we trade DeRozan, let's say we trade Vooch, and I'll even throw in this. Let's say we trade Alex Caruso because maybe a team's willing to give up 2 first-round picks for it. Okay, um, and so suddenly we're running a lineup if Lonzo's healthy of Ball, Levine, Terry, P. Will, and someone at center. Right, we're playing Ayo Dosunmu a ton, and then potentially also getting some young guys in the DeRozan trade, in the Vooch trade. Right, like I don't think Billy Donovan would necessarily be opposed to that. It's not a full out rebuild, right? It's not full out tanking, right? We're not trying to lose games as I always try to make a big point to NBA teams. Like if you're full out tanking, you're not looking to develop anybody. You're full out trying to lose. Okay. I think there's a big difference between full out tanking and actually like full out and just doing it like a rebuild that isn't full out tanking, right? I think obviously if you're doing a rebuild, you're going to be worse in general. But I always look at that was it 11-win season for Philadelphia and the trust the process stuff. Like they didn't develop anybody in that year, right? They legit that year when they won 11 games, they didn't develop anybody. They legit were losing every single game intentionally, and they would make sure that they weren't developing anybody because it would cost them too many games, right? I think that's where I'm like Billy Donovan doesn't want to do that, sure, but I think he would be open to the idea of a soft reset, which is trade DeRozan, trade Vooch, trade some of the other vets on this team, get some young blood into this roster, and start kind of figuring out from there. Obviously, keep Zach, right? And he'll be kind of that bridge piece, and then hopefully, right, Patrick Williams starts to develop, Io develops, Dalen Terry develops, whoever you traded in whoever you got back in the DeMar DeRozan trade starts to develop, right? That's kind of what I think I don't think Billy Donovan would be necessarily opposed to because he went through his first year of the Bulls, right? The Bulls in his first year went 31 and 41. Okay, that's not a good team, and that team had young guys on the team, right? They had Wendell, they had Laurie, and I know we traded Wendell, but we had Kobe, right? Now, obviously, we just drafted Patrick Williams, the 4th overall pick in his first year. So I don't think Billy would necessarily be like that opposed to kind of doing that soft reset. Which that's kind of where I'm like leaning towards. Like I would hope that the Bulls front office is thinking like, okay, we need to do a soft reset, right? The 30-year-old guys, right? DeRozan, Vooch, gotta go. Dragic, don't re-sign him. Drummond gone, right? And here's the thing, I think Andre Drummond's gonna get traded at this trade deadline, by the way. And then potentially even move Caruso, which I know a lot of Bulls fans would be like, what the hell? But if a team's giving me 2 first-round picks for Alex Caruso, I'm taking it. Yeah, you move on from there, right? You start trying to figuring out from there what you can do with the new assets and such. Give me 1 second. I don't know if you guys heard. I just heard my dog's barking, and I need to give me a sec. Listen to the music. Go ahead and just watch this play, just because. It's an essence of the Bulls season. I do apologize. My dog's. Oh my god. My little puppy here is shaking. Someone was at the door. Oh, they're nervous. All right. All right. Our next 10 to 20 years is going to be decent season, bad season, retool, all cycles. Like, will we ever get to the top tier level? So here's the thing, Patrick. That's also what I'm worried about, right? I'm also concerned that if Jerry Reinsdorf is going to continue to live for the next, half decade, and then passes it down to Michael as ownership, which I expect. Hey, it's okay. What I'm worried about is that the Reinsdorf way is going to be that they're going to be good enough to make the playoffs every single year, but then that's it, right? Where you're not going to see them make that next move to kind of push themselves up to the top tier teams, right? So I would hope that's not what's gonna happen, um, but I'm concerned that that's what's gonna. Like I am very concerned about that. Now you're probably then saying like, well, Duncan, why do you want a soft reset? The reason why I want a soft reset is because if we do a full out rebuild, okay, what I'm worried about is that the Bulls front office, if that's what they're thinking, right, what they're gonna do is that they're gonna try to speed up the rebuild, okay, hence what they did in when they got here, right? Which, by the way, again, this whole stuff that it's like, oh, if we kept Lowry, kept Wendell, kept drafted Franz, drafted Tyrese, like that there's so many things that have to go right for that to have worked. Okay, I don't think Zach's here still if that happens. Okay, um, and I don't think people understand like there has to be a lot of things that have to go right in that sort of scenario. Like, sorry, I'm trying to make sure my dog doesn't freak out too much. Come here, it's okay. Goodness, I have to hold her. Try to hold her. But the other thing too is this. Uh, if we full out rebuild, okay, I think the front office would try to like do as much as possible to try to get through that rebuild as quickly as possible, and that to me is gonna completely just ruin the rebuild, right? And I don't think this Bulls front office necessarily wants to go through that sort of process. Um, and the other thing too is this. Uh, to me, right now the NBA is as wide open as it's ever going to be. Okay, I think we just we're looking around the league. We see a bunch of great duos, right, around the league, and there's not really necessarily like a team that has like a big three that is considered like a top of the line, Miami Heat type big three that we saw with LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh, right? There's obviously teams with big threes. I think Milwaukee, if Chris Middleton's healthy, they have a big three in a sense, but Drew Holiday is not really an all-star. He's played very well this year, though. I'll give him that. 76ers, they have a big three in Embiid, Harden, and Maxey, but you can see that James Harden, right, is not necessarily like he might make the All-Star team, but he's not like James Harden of Houston Rockets days. But if we ever see stars kind of team up and where they're like both their top tier, right? It'd be like Tatum and Brown, right? Those two guys have teamed up very, very well. And then just you just looking around the league and you're just kind of like, oh, look, KD and Kyrie, that's another duo. I don't count Ben Simmons as part of that big three, by the way. I think they have some issues going on there with Ben Simmons. I don't know if you guys saw, but Jacques Vaughn has called out Ben Simmons again in a press conference. So, Doc Rivers called out Ben Simmons. Now Jacques Vaughn is. So, who's the common denominator, right? I think that for the Bulls, right, I worry about some other star kind of rising to the occasion, right, and suddenly taking over the league when you start to finally officially get through that rebuild and start winning with the squad that you've assembled. Okay, and I think that that's just not going to end up going well, unfortunately. But if the front office decides to do that again, if they're going to go through the rebuild, I want them to go through it the right way. I want them to go through every part of the process of it and not try to speed it up. Okay. I think I always look at the Minnesota Timberwolves when they trade for Jimmy Butler, like that's speeding up a rebuild. Okay. where they think that, oh, we're ready to win now, when really they weren't ready to win, right? I think for them, they're thinking, oh, Jimmy Butler's that next piece that's gonna push us to the top tier teams, and they're an 8 seed, right? Um, I think that's where I'm just concerned that the front office would do that. I truly hope that they don't, though. I would hope that if they decide to rebuild, that they go through it all and make the right moves at the right time, um, and not try to speed it up and try to uh, move yeah, not try to uh, gut future assets in a rebuild. That, again, a rebuild is never uh is never guaranteed, no matter what. Crap.